Let's get right into it with the abilities. RX-78 Gundam's primary fire ability is Beam Rifle, a mid-range weapon that fires a 172 damage shot every 0.45 seconds, and rapidly loses accuracy. The 6-shot weapon drops to around 100 damage at range, and can headshot for double damage. Holding secondary fire allows RX-78 to scope down and remove all accuracy loss. RX-78 moves slower and fires a shot every 0.55 seconds, but gains increased damage to 230 damage per shot that also drops down to 100 at long range. RX-78 Gundam's F ability is Hyper Hammer. Throw a ranged mace projectile that hits for 300 damage in addition to a stun, knockback, and guard break. While Hyper Hammer is a ranged ability, it is most effectively used defensively at close range, so save it to break through enemy shields and to stun aggressive brawlers diving into your face. This 8-second cooldown ability cannot headshot, but striking a wall or the ground will knock back and slightly damage nearby enemies. RX-78 Gundam's E ability is Gundam Shield. Take cover behind a shield for 3.5 seconds, or until it loses all 1000 hit points. RX-78 can dash and hover while using this ability, but sprinting or attacking will end it early. This shield works differently from other shields, as it is not a resource bar ability, so one usage of the shield and you must wait 10 seconds to reuse it. Also, be careful using this ability in front of enemies with stun abilities, as the shield will be broken through and RX-78 will take damage if hit by one. RX-78 Gundam's left shift ability is Thruster Gauge, a 2-section mobility bar. It can be used slowly to sprint or to hover in mid-air, or each bar can be fully expended as a short-range dash. Use it to dash back from aggressive flanks, and to quickly sprint back to battle after death. RX-78's G maneuver ability is Super Napalm. Throw a 700 HP grenade that explodes after a short countdown, dealing heavy damage in a large radius through obstacles. Use this ability to force enemies away from important locations, or to destroy enemies who are stuck in tight spaces or otherwise unable to escape. This ability deals 700 damage per second near the center and 300 damage per second at maximum range. So what are the strengths and weaknesses of the RX-78 Gundam? RX-78 is a very good all-around mobile suit. Its main strengths lie in its solid damage, good mobility, and decent effective range. However, its biggest strength is that its abilities enable counterplay against most of its weaknesses. RX-78 Gundam struggles in long-range encounters with mobile suits such as GM Sniper and Ashimar. It will simply be outranged and must be drastically better than the Sniper to best it in a one-on-one. However, RX-78's shield and 2 dashes allow it to safely decrease distance to the Sniper, where it can then take a favorable mid-range fight, or easily best it close ranged. RX-78's second weakness is its vulnerability to close-range mobile suits. In a raw fight with mobile suits like Barbatos and Sazabi, RX-78 will frequently be blown up before it can escape. Yet, if RX-78 Gundam is able to land its Hyper Hammer in this exchange, it will be able to escape at minimum, and often also kill its attacker. So saving this cooldown, and then consistently hitting it is imperative to success. The biggest weakness of RX-78 Gundam is its lack of vertical mobility. Its other weaknesses are counterable, but an inability to quickly gain high ground leaves RX-78 to struggle on any high verticality map. With that covered, let's talk about when you should play RX-78 Gundam. As mentioned before, the RX-78 is a very good all-around mobile suit. With high mid-range damage, a shield, a stun, and good horizontal mobility, RX-78 is great in most situations, especially as an added beef to counter enemy shield mobile suits or close-ranged enemies. While it may not be the perfect mobile suit for every situation, its flexibility allows great effectiveness on most maps, so feel free to play RX-78 Gundam at nearly any time. However, there are 3 primary cases in which you should not play the RX-78. First, you will want to avoid playing RX-78 on maps with very long sightlines, where it will be forced to fight outside of its effective range. Characters like GM Sniper and Turn A Gundam thrive in these situations, and will always best an equally skilled RX-78 player. Second, RX-78 tends to struggle in very close quarter engagements against mobile suits like Barbatos and Sazabi, so also avoid playing RX-78 on maps with too many tight areas. Third, RX-78 does not have a vertical mobility option, so on maps where high ground is not easily accessed without vertical mobility, there are simply better mobile suits to play. An RX-78 player will constantly find themselves out of position on these maps, and desperately missing the ability to reach high grounds quickly. Putting everything together, how do you play the RX-78 Gundam? RX-78 should always be playing within its close to medium effective range. Take advantage of mid-range sight lines and avoid long-range engagements against mobile suits such as GM Sniper, Ashimar, and Turn A Gundam. If needed, use Gundam Shield to cross through dangerous locations and move within medium range of the enemy. RX-78's shield can be used with its 2 dashes to cover great distance also, but be careful of positioning too aggressively after, as you will no longer have any cooldowns to disengage with. While the RX-78 Gundam is strong against mobile suits like Sazabi and Barbatos, it will still lose to them in close quarter fights, so avoid tight corridors where close range enemies are likely to engage from. These locations not only force you into close range, but also limit your ability to see these mobile suits at distance, where you can play more carefully and damage them before they get close. It is also very important not to waste RX-78's Hyper Hammer. Its stun is a deterrent to close range and shield mobile suits, so hold this cooldown until you're engaged upon. An RX-78 that always has its Hyper Hammer available is a much more risky dive for enemies like Sazabi and Barbatos. RX-78 Gundam's G maneuver has two primary purposes, the most obvious of which is to secure kills on enemies that get stuck in a large explosion. However, as players grow accustomed to this ultimate ability, killing enemies will become more and more difficult. So how should one use RX-78's G maneuver? If there are likely chances to kill enemies with Super Napalm, then take them. But the most consistent and effective usage of this ultimate is to force enemies away from locations with it, which is called zoning. Use Super Napalm to zone enemies out of high value locations, or away from objectives as they attempt to contest them. This will provide guaranteed value, but also frequently push the enemies into sightlines where you and your team can easily pick them off. There is so much potential for zoning with this G maneuver, so keep in mind the possibilities. While the RX-78 Gundam has a standard 1000 hit points, its shield and mace make it beefy for a damage-focused mobile suit. However, this does not make the RX-78 a frontliner. A proper frontliner must be tanky enough to play against a full HP team that still have all their cooldowns available, which RX-78 cannot. So how should an RX-78 play in a teamfight? An RX-78 player must play behind its frontliners and wait for an opportunity to arrive. On attack, this will often come in the form of a Sazabi diving in, or tanks just aggressively moving forward. When a frontline plays aggressively, this opens up safe space to push into. It also causes the fight to break down to where the enemy team will be lacking HP, will have already used their abilities, or just generally not be able to prevent an RX-78 player from taking aggressive flanks. So use the safe space your frontline creates to push closer to the enemy and hit them with your primary fire. As cooldowns are used and enemies lose hit points, they will become vulnerable to aggressive plays, and this is the perfect time to flank. Flanking enables RX-78 to threaten enemies from another angle, which will open up shots onto weakened enemies hiding behind cover, and force the enemy to choose between shooting you or the main team. So, flank aggressively to not miss opportunities that arise, but equally be careful not to overextend and feed a free death. To determine how far you can safely flank, consider the remaining strength of the enemy team versus your available cooldowns and hit points. Your goal is to flank as aggressively as possible, while still being able to return to your team when threatened. A vulnerable team does not mean a one fight, so flanking too far or staying too long will often just end in an unfruitful death. Make sure to check out my other damage dealer guides like Ashimar and Pale Rider, which you can find in this playlist right here, or go watch the Sazabi guide to learn how to play against one of the RX-78's biggest counters. Thanks so much for watching the video, everyone. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. I have 8 more of these guides set to release for the remaining mole suits, so hit the notification icon to see them as soon as they're ready.